I think what I've got from this, some really fascinating talks in this section, a few things. Context is everything. We're trying to be unambiguous. The last session we were exploring ambiguity and the fact that does it matter or not. I think in the talks we've got in this section, everything has got to be totally unambiguous and very clear. But also the idea of the fact that each client is different, each audience, each user group is different, and they all need to understand that the signs will work for them. For instance, Sibelius, all of the different clients that you worked for all had different priorities, and Mao, again, completely different priorities with the way that you're looking at pictograms, where maybe aesthetics are not top of the list, but certainly usability is, which it needs to be for everything, really. So have we got any more questions? Because
I have one. I have a question, which is it even possible to design a person icon anymore? Does any icon have to be gendered? Or I should say, does every icon have to be gendered?
It depends whether you want to have it for the toilet or not. For the toilet, you have to gender it, excuse me. But all the others, you could try to take an almost maybe gender neutral pictogram. But the context, yeah, we have the gender neutral pictogram, and when the person is in the elevator, it looks neutral, and if you have it alone, it's not that neutral anymore.
Yeah, but as you were saying, in many respects, the symbol for toilets is a man and a woman. If you just had one person, then would you think that it was toilets? You probably wouldn't. It's almost like the fact that you need two, which tells you it's toilets because it's differentiated. I admire your efforts to design a gender neutral symbol, and I think you've done really well. So well done with that. But again, would it work if you had two gender neutral symbols that were identical next to each other to represent toilets?
No. The question is also when you don't do it with the clothes, not the skirt, because maybe soon all men wear skirts. Then you have to do it with the hair, and the hair is very small. So when the pictogram gets an icon on a smartphone, hair is maybe too detailed. Then you can do it with the breast or with the shape of the person. So you can't do that in all cultures, or maybe we all don't want it. This is, there is not a real solution. This is why we all stick with the skirt. Yeah, even if we don't wear the skirts, this is visible in a way, and visible very small on, yeah.
Yeah, it's really funny. A very long time ago, I was actually going to meet Nigel Holmes in Zeist, which is the only time I've met him. And I got on a bus from a station to try and find Zeist, and I sat down on a seat that was, I think, slightly elevated from the others, and it looked really colourful. And I sat on it, and then I realised that this was a seat for people who were disabled, pregnant, etc. And it just didn't strike me that they'd actually woven this design into the fabric And that was what it was all about. I moved very quickly, very embarrassed. But again, it's context. If you see two figures, you think it's toilets. A lot of the symbols that Mandar was showing us, again, context. You see them in the group, but it was really interesting to think that some of the pregnant women could be someone sitting with their leg on the seat, or someone who was actually fat. But again, if you saw them in a line, or you understood the context of it all, then it would make sense. And I think that we have to understand the context where our symbols go, so we know what to expect and how to read them.
Just adding to the discussion of context, I think if you extrapolate that just a little bit, one of the keys to making icons that are comprehended well is to make sure that you control the context, or add enough information to the context to give people the right context to interpret it. That's one comment. The other comment is certainly gender neutral, and Symbol said it well, whenever possible, but certainly gender neutral in a medical environment. There are certain places where you don't want gender neutrality. The obstetrics and gynecology department, you don't want a gender neutral symbol. The place where breast cancer surgery is going to be the main topic, you don't want that to be gender neutral necessarily. So, certainly in medical context, you gender neutral as often as possible. And I was on the Hablamos Juntos design team, and it was certainly a mistake to make the doctors men and not women, and the nurses women. That was inappropriate, but it just wasn't considered at the time, and it didn't come up. But anyway, so yes, gender neutral as much as possible, but in a medical context in particular, sex differentiation is extremely important sometimes.
And Sue, I would like to make another comment. Thank you, Professor Send. I would like to make another very brief comment about the 50 years after the Dreyfuss approach. I think it's very important collaboration. As we can see in Mandar presentation, Daniel presentation, Mao presentation, everyone is trying to make a local approach to a very global challenge, gender, inclusivity, culture, as Sergio presented. And I think it's very important to see what are their approaches and how we can collaborate to create, for example, a solution. Or I'm not trying to say that there's a unified solution. It's not the utopia of universality. It's more like having this visual library, open visual library, like OpenMoji, to see and how every one of us are trying to solution that global or intercultural problem. I think it's very important to rescue the spirit of Dreyfuss. This is something that resonated from the yesterday presentations.
It's really funny going back. The Icagrada Signs and Symbols Commission were trying with their international commission to create a forum where everyone knew what everyone else was doing to try to get this uniformity together. And I don't know how much they succeeded in doing it, but the spirit was there to want to do this, so that everybody did know what they were all doing. So I don't know what the answer to that is, as to how we actually do get everyone to understand what's going on in the world. This was Keith saying, this was the problem that Icagrada, Modley, Dreyfuss et al. Saw everyone making their own version of symbols. But is it such a problem, or is it that now, after AIGA, DOT and ISO, we have arrived at some standard recognizable approaches that allow variation? yeah, I think we have, and I think it's about flavor, it's about audience, it's about context. Certainly.
Sue, can I ask a question?
Of course.
So, but for you and Symbol, is there really any argument about having a picture of a woman on the door to a toilet that is for women? Why do you need I mean, you made the point correctly. It would be confusing if you wanted women to go into one door and men the other, that they had neutral symbols. I mean, I think Symbol is right that may be the only place where you do need something that shows a difference between the genders.
Yes, that's what I tried to say. Yes.
Yeah, and it's a bit like what we use for the phone now. I mean, you can still see as it was said yesterday, you know, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit as well next time in the next talk, that we understand old-fashioned symbols as still being symbolic of what the thing is now, even though it doesn't look like that now. So women wearing skirts, I think, is still, or am I just being old-fashioned here? I think that still says woman, not in a restrictive way. I mean, yes, some men wear skirts. I mean, that picture of Brad Pitt you showed was not exactly the way he's normally seen, but and some Scotsmen wear skirts and they're called kilts. But I mean, is there confusion in Scotland about toilets? I don't think so. I'm not sure what the argument is here to insist on, and what Jason, you just said, can you actually design a thing that is gender neutral? That makes sense in every context. And Sue, you're right, context is everything. And Paul said that too, just now. I'm not sure I've said anything here, but
it's funny. Also, there's if with trains, we've got level crossings in the UK, and there's the icon is of a steam train on the sign.
yeah. Well, that's partly because it costs a lot to change the sign, so you leave the old ones there.
No, it's not only about that. We have stereotypes in our head, and icons, pictograms always lag, let's say, for 20, 30 years behind. So they never represent the actual state of affairs or ideas about what's desirable. They represent stereotypes that we have, and usually these are quite old and quite established. And that's exactly also why the issue of gender or neutral is currently such a thing, because stereotypes do influence our current behavior also.
Yeah,
so it's an interesting, yeah,
it is. But I mean, I wrote down a thing that Symbol said, which was pictograms will always be changing, and I feel particularly analog in this group, especially after the talk about how quickly you can change things online, and you keep changing them and you have to update them. I think, I don't know, I'll wait till my talk.
Yeah.
You do wonder whether, if you had, I mean, I really liked your images of the photographs in India, where, you know, great big image of something that looked like a woman and something that looked like a man. You say you don't say anything, or you could put man and woman in 50 different languages all over the door.
Can I comment?
Find your own.
Can I comment?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, we are as designers, we are worried a lot about the symbol, but actually when the user is looking for a toilet, there are many clues in the context. First clue is that he has to urinate. Second clue is he's looking for the doors where people are going and coming out. And when there is a lot of population, like in our country, they don't worry about the symbols. They ask someone, where is the toilet? So it is a small part. I would say that it is crucial. It is a part. That is the reason I say icon is just the sticker. Context has a lot of meanings which devoid of the sticker can manage. That means even if you have a poor sticker, my need to urinate will find a way. So there is the meaning is also made in the other part, not just in the graphic icon. But yes, both are important. Both together make a meaning.
I really feel that the international symbol for toilet is a man and a woman next to each other.
No, it is because the concern of icon, index, and symbol. I cannot show the act of urinating. That would be too gross for all the cultures, and that is the reason I need to use an indexical reference of the for the toilet. Because if I use a specific iconic representation of the toilet, that might change across many countries. Because the way the toilet is built, until we had the same toilet across the world, then we can use that as a representation.
Yeah, but culture change at a different pace than technology. So I think also it's an important issue to consider.
But the one interest, I think we cannot change the toilet thing anymore, and nobody knows how he should change it. But the interesting thing is the human being and the population. So what would happen if Marie Neurath would have put all the women there as population? And this is a quite interesting point, that it is totally clear that if you want to say population or human being, then it is more a man than a woman.
That's not good.
Well, in my work, I'm never going to do anything about toilets, right? Because I'm working predominantly in business design. So, but what I find funny is that on one hand, the idea of gendered everything seems really appealing, and that's kind of the direction that emoji's going. But then kind of non-gendered for like, this is what people do, which we almost saw again in Sergio's, right? Because we saw some genders, but not necessarily when it comes to activities. Maybe you can add on that. Is there even a way to keep it completely gender free for anything?
Maybe
right? Because the toilet discussion, the toilet discussion informs even things that have to do with it.
Yeah, this is, yeah, yes, Jason, I think so. This is what we try. If the clothes is not just an Hose, was heißt denn Hose? Pant. It's just a pant. If it is something in between and you don't know exactly, is it a skirt? Is it a pant? What is it? Then it is somehow neutral. Or is it a cape? When we did the cape for the Hanover airport, this worked very well. But yeah.
May I ask a question? Could somehow screens or animation play a role? Because I have the impression that we're currently talking about fixed pictograms, but a pictogram that could change based upon the person who approaches it, or something that's more flexible.
To the comment a moment ago about is anything gender neutral, I'm studying an ancient, I'm studying biblical Hebrew, and there's a word in Hebrew, Adam, which means Adam means mankind. Basically, it's often translated man, for convenience, but I think that's an important concept that is gender neutral, which is mankind or humankind. Now, unfortunately, my English, the word man is in both of those, right? So it's skewed toward maleness, but nevertheless, the concept is that there are just humans. There is something about that it means to just be a human that transcends male and female. So I would say there are important concepts that are gender neutral, and that's a pretty important one.
I would argue that, like, as you said, mankind is not gender neutral. And that's why through the emojis and the icons, we're discussing the issue of having a male, and Marie Nora did not use males and females or man and women. She used a man to represent humanity, because we are used to using the term mankind versus humans. I'm probably going to make a statement that, is just obvious and everybody's thinking, but we're dealing with language. We're dealing with visual language, just like the written alphabets and just like the languages we all speak in different countries. If we look at traffic signs, they are very specific to those countries. And when you go travel to a country, you pick up the traffic sign book and you familiarize yourself with it, and you realize that there are similarities, but the stop sign in Spain is not the same as the stop sign in the US. But there are certain elements in there that remind you of the universality of those symbols. So it makes it a little easier to understand. So I think that perhaps there can't be like a one unified global iconic language, because we have different regions, but we can come close to it. And even O'Donnell, he said that. I mean, people put words in his mouth, that he was utopian, that he just was trying to create. No, he wasn't trying to create a language for everyone. He was trying to create a system that could be adopted so people could communicate. And, correct me if I'm wrong, especially Jason, because he's the guy, Sue, in that aspect. But that's my take on isotype. So language is in a constant flux. It could take decades, it could take centuries for it to change. My native language was seen as vulgar Latin. Spanish and Portuguese were vulgar Latin before they became global languages. Now, what do we use? We use English to communicate. For the most part, that's like the neutral, if you will, language that we are all using today. I'm going to a conference in Colombia. I can either speak in Spanish, or they would prefer that we all present in English, because that is the language today. It wasn't 100 years ago, and it wasn't, centuries ago. Other languages were in power, if you will. So I guess I just wanted to maybe I'm just thinking out loud. I apologize for that, but I think that everybody's making some really wonderful points. We're in a very complicated space as designers of the visual, if you will. But I think we, with a little flexibility there, we can, connect these symbols, these signs, these icons, because again, we have icons, right? That for the most part can be, they can be deciphered in wherever you are. If I'm in the UAE and I'm going to the restroom and I see a picture of a male in a dish dash, because that's a long, dress or skirt, I know that's for males. and we can get into how I know that, but there are certain symbols or signs that are very cultural based that require understanding and require us agreeing to that. And I think we're trying to come up with signs that everyone buys into or everyone agrees to. Even neutral signs need to be agreed upon, because not everyone sees neutrality the same way. So anyway, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you for listening.
So Maria, maybe just to sum up, I think that what you're touching on is the difference between the semantic ambiguity of language versus the semantic ambiguity of images and icons. They're kind of quite different when you start to think about it. And that said, aren't we about time for a break?
I think we probably are.
Yes.
Okay.